Ricky!
What's up, man?
What's up?
How's it going?
I've been taking voice lessons. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, it's improving. You're getting way closer to hitting the actual falsetto that you're aiming for. So, yeah, keep working at it, man.
Yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there. Maybe we'll do like what 100 more, and then I'll eventually get there. So,
Yeah, practice
um,
makes perfect.
yeah, there you go. There you go. If I'm not going to practice in front of a live audience, which is basically one person because I can't
Right.
see who's
Yeah.
listening to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you get better. Dude, welcome back, man. We have been kind of slow getting pods out. We were like banging them out, banging them out, banging them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we've got kind of like that lull in the schedule right now, too, where you've got that 2 weeks between that last preseason game before you get into the regular season.
Right.
Luckily, we do have at least a little bit to talk about today, right? With the
Yeah.
53-man roster and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And we've already decided we're going to do 2 a week moving forward.
Yeah.
We'll do a game recap and then a pregame. So
That's
if
right.
anybody's listening and cares that how many we're going to start putting them out and when to look for them, we'll do one
Yep.
post-game and one pregame from here on out. So yes, Let's get right into the 53-man roster because there were some surprises, but not too crazy surprising.
Yeah.
More of like hopefuls that we had that didn't make it versus people that were like, wow, I can't believe they didn't make it kind of
Right.
people. So let's just start off with the people that we're bringing in before we get to surprise cuts. Or do you want to do surprise cuts first? Or just cuts first?
Yeah, either way. So did you have anybody surprise cut wise that was like your biggest surprise of all of them?
Not biggest. I guess Wooten is probably my biggest surprise.
Okay.
That was probably my biggest surprise cut. But
And he was kind of like a second round movement too. He wasn't
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah, nobody huge. Raekwon Williams, I guess, was a little surprising.
Yeah, that was surprising, right? Because I mean, he had seemed like he had gained some serious steam and momentum, and with Marquand being released, and we know that had maybe a little bit more to do with injury than what was originally led on. But yeah, Raekwon I thought was a really interesting one.
Yeah. And it still seems like we have time. We're still looking for that person.
Yeah,
seems like.
And also what we've heard from Frank Reich too about the whole our squad is the 53-man plus the 16 practice squad, right? He called it the 69-man roster is how he views it. So there's also just this idea that it's like a farm system essentially is how he's operating with this, that the practice squad is going to have call-ups and all those kinds of things where it's not just this 53-man end-all be-all kind of situation. And I think that's kind of evidence with some of the cuts, right? Like, so for me, Justin McCray and Keith Taylor were the two that I was really surprised didn't make that initial 53. And I guess the Justin McCray thing came down to familiarity with James Campen and the fact that he had been serving as our second team center. It was a little bit surprising seeing him go. I thought that he just had that versatility along the offensive line that we needed from an experienced player. Keith Taylor, man, that's a tough one for me. And I still haven't really tied myself to feeling good about. It's not so much about Keith Taylor, the player. That's the weird part for me, I think. I think it's what he provided the defense. A tall, lengthy boundary corner that could fill in on spot starts, but also had the versatility to play inside, outside in heavy, pass coverage alignments. And I think that him being gone and us bringing in somebody that I know that we'll talk about here shortly at such a different physical profile, it makes me a little bit concerned what happens if JC or Dante, who have had some health issues, what happens if they go down and we have to start CJ Henderson or Troy Hill as cornerback 2? That's a different outlook for me than it was thinking about Keith Taylor playing there. And Keith looked like he had a pretty good summer, in my opinion. I thought that he had a nice preseason. I thought he had a nice camp. And I've seen a lot of differing opinions on that. So maybe I've misconstrued the way that I watched the preseason. But from individual reps, he looked like he was hanging in there pretty tough. So those would be the two that I think that I had the most surprise reaction from.
Yeah, it kind of seems like, first of all, good on Fitterer and the scouts and how plugged in they are by knowing that almost all of these guys would make it through waivers. Like the only guy that from the initial, I know we lost Corral. I think that's why they kept Corral. I think they wanted like the Pats to pick up, somebody else that got cut.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why we kept him for a little bit longer. So maybe same thing with Bright too. We kind of waited like a little longer just to make sure that everybody had already picked up their guys.
Sure.
So good on them, man. I mean, they Bro made it through waivers. McCray, Leota, like these guys were not being targeted by other teams,
Well,
which
the
is
bad part about that, though, right? Because there's a part of that that's a little ominous.
mhm,
And that's that all of these other NFL front offices looked at the cuts that we made and said there's not an NFL player in there that we would be willing to give up a waiver claim to get. Now, we only had Keith Taylor, I think, is the only other player that signed with a different practice squad, right? He signed with the Chiefs.
mhm,
And I think that makes sense too. He could have came back here in the practice squad, but he probably felt a way, man, about being released
yeah,
and kind of just like left out for it. And that's fair, but we also have to, as much of a Keith Taylor supporter as I was, I also completely acknowledged his shortcomings and
right.
bad games and bad showings. So at some point you do cut ties with that. But there is a little ominous feeling about the fact that no other NFL front office gave a shit about any other players that we had out there, right?
Mhm.
Like we
Yeah, yeah,
poached a few from others, and nobody wanted anything to do with us. So that kind of telling on the way that this roster was organized and
yeah.
composed from the previous regime, and Fitterer to a little bit too, though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that we as Panther fans kind of need to change our mindset of we want to win a Super Bowl. We don't
Yeah,
want to be average. We don't want to be good. So having good players is makes you good. Having
right,
high upside guys can make you great. Like that's the
right.
guys that you want to hit on, those high upside guys. And we've done that. I mean, that's DJ Johnson that we're talking about. I think that we can get to it a little bit. I think that's why we keep Barno. I think that's why we keep YGN.
Yeah.
That those high elite motors, talent, mentality. Like those are the guys that you kind of want, and that's how you get the kid that made the interception from the Patriots against. I don't know if I can't think of his name right now against the uh, Seahawks. Like you get those guys that come out of no. Josh
Hmm.
Norman was kind of like that. You get those guys that kind of come out of nowhere that have this high upside and a high motor and a high Steve Smith that like I play bigger than I am kind of guys. And we
Yeah.
drafted, you could see when we drafted DJ Johnson, Jamie Robinson was like that.
Yeah.
Zavala's like that. It's just these guys that, Mingo.
Traits, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, I'm physically
Traits and
gifted
attitudes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I want to hit people and I want to win. And that's what so we can let's go into the guys that we brought in. Well, I think we should bring in the guys we brought in for these guys, and then we'll go into the guys that were bubbles and that kind
Yeah.
of made it. So the guys we brought in, I've only heavily looked into Smith Marset, which makes a ton of sense. Like he brings that mentality. I don't worry about that guy fumbling the football or being like kind of scared of anything or anybody or taking a hit. That dude's going to catch every punt or kick return, and he is going to be a dog if anything happens to our top tier receivers. High upside guy. I think he's a 4.40 guy,
Yeah.
deep threat guy. I really like his mentality. I'm glad we brought him in. And same with Deshaun Jameson. Same thing. Like he is. Steve Wilkes spoke glowingly about
Yeah.
him.
He did.
They
Yeah.
they really like him. He's the same kind of thing. He's a little undersized, but man, he wants to hit people. He thinks that he's the best player in the room. Really like that addition. And even though that was probably Keith Taylor's spot, and Keith Taylor's probably better right now, that
Hmm.
guy might have that upside
Sure. Yeah. That makes
about
sense.
that. So let me just go through the other guys that I didn't really know a lot about. Ricky
Well,
Lee.
and real quick too, let's
Go.
touch on Smith Marset one last time
Okay.
because I think, and I sorry I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
I
me too.
did want to point out a couple things because I also really like that signing as well. Um, so the keyword, right, the buzzword after preseason for our receiving group was separation. That we had
Mm-hmm.
a lack of separation and we didn't have anybody other than who I would say Jonathan Mingo in the preseason showed that he can create his own separation. That is something that Smith Marset brings to the table. And that is one of the things that he demonstrated in the preseason where he led the Chiefs in receiving. I believe he had like 290 yards receiving, I think, in the preseason.
195 and 2 touchdowns, I think.
Is that what it was? Okay.
290 is a lot of yards
Yeah,
for
I
a
thought for
preseason
some
game.
reason, yeah, for some
Yeah.
reason. Did I say 290? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was
Sorry.
195. I want to
It's
say.
not coffee in my coffee cup. So sorry, everybody. Okay, so he led them in receiving yards. He showed the big play capability in the preseason as well.
Mm.
But one of the other things that I really like about this that I thought was really important was Frank Reich talked about how Adam Thielen's cosign and his input on this guy was very integral to bringing him in. And I like that Thielen, who we all say is the best route runner, is the craftiest, most veteran, most knowledgeable receiver that we have on this roster. I like that he pointed out a shifty, fast guy to also say, hey, look, I saw enough from him in the limited time that I played with him that I think that he can develop into something that we don't have on this roster. So that's a really big cosign, and that's a really good fortuitous sign of what he could potentially be to this offense. We should temper a little bit of expectations just because of the fact that this guy was waived or was about to be waived and claimed. We made the trade for the conditional 7th round swap to get him before that process. But in essence, it's the same sentiment, right? That he was about to be cut from another team. And the Chiefs don't have this overwhelming group of wide receivers themselves.
Yeah, they just got that. They're like a little tiny bit better, like the Justin Ross,
right?
Like
That's exactly right. And I think that they just didn't have the void in his skill set that we did.
Right.
So he was more valuable to our team than he was to theirs, despite them liking him a whole lot.
Yep.
So I am very happy about that. And Deshaun Jameson was another guy that I really do like what he has shown on film at his time in Texas. He does have some dynamic ability. He's got the speed. He's small. That's the only thing is that he's short. And that's what we kind of touched about earlier with Keith Taylor and his size and the ability to play the boundary and to be able to move all the other pieces around by having him out there. I do want to see what Deshaun Jameson can bring, but you're right. Steve Wilks had nothing but good comments on his abilities. So if we like Steve Wilks so much last year, then we should probably feel pretty good about that endorsement as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And he's not going to take the field game one. Neither one of them are. And Reich calls Smith-Marsette a prospect. Like he said he's going to be integral in the kick returns, which we needed, or the return game. I don't know which returns he's going to do. But he's going to be that specialist and be our Andre Roberts, basically, because I think Shai was going to be that guy or Bird was going to be that guy.
Yeah.
And we don't have either one of them, so we needed that guy.
And Smith-Marsette, he excels in that. He was all Big Ten as a return specialist. So, I mean, that's also an accolade that none of the other guys that we have on the roster had. So we know that he's built for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And like I said, man, that guy's just, he's very highly of himself. He's got confidence. I'm not worried about, oh God, is this guy going to catch this ball? They're about to hit him. No, he's going to take hits. He's going to talk trash. He's going to be physical. And I think that's what we need this team to be.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen the clip of him being interviewed by the reporter after the preseason game and they asked, hey, what do you think of yourself? He says, I think I'm one of the baddest motherfuckers out there. Like, gotta love that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
very Jamie Robinson of him.
Yeah.
Jamie Robinson the same way. And that's why we loved him so much coming in, even though that we still got to see some more of him doing it. So we talked about these guys that I kind of haven't watched a lot of tape on. Ricky Lee, Dunk on Demand, on Twitter, said something about him before. He said he thought that he was very, very strong. We have
Ricky Lee has a good so he was playing a lot of what was he, left tackle. I think they had him playing a lot in the preseason, and Reich has already made mention that they're going to put him on the right tackle side too. So he, in essence, is going to start getting a little bit of that swing tackle opportunity with Cam Irving out of the way. And his physical profile does work for that because he's 6'4", 295, 300. Yeah. So he's a little bit on that slider side. So he's a little bit more athletic and nimble on his feet. So I do really like that. And he's an NCAA guy too. So that's always a positive local tie to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cherilus, I guess you say his name. He's making the linebacking squad over Wooten and Brandon Smith.
It's really interesting, right? He's an undrafted free agent out of Alcorn State. High motor guy, plays fast, but he transferred from UMass to Alcorn State. And at UMass, he had some trouble getting off of blocks and with just strength and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Now, when he started playing in Division II at Alcorn State, he flashed a lot more, and he looked like the superior athlete out there. Yeah. So my only concern is going to be if he needed that kind of step down in competition to show the high-end traits and abilities that he showed at Alcorn State, what does he look like in the NFL, right? Like, if these are all bigger and stronger guys, so he's going to have to add some functional strength. He's got great speed, good instincts, it seems like. His tackling isn't really a problem. It's going to be the strength to complete the tackle and make the play.
Yeah.
But, we did get a up-close look at him. He was on the Jets team, and we had the joint practices. So somebody on this staff saw something that they liked a whole lot out of this guy, and I'm just going to kind of default to their opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what it seems. That's why we like. I'm not even gonna say his name. Blank Hill, Grugier Hill.
Camus
He's
Grugier Hill.
fast. He makes
Yeah.
plays. He gets the ball quickly. That's what we love about Luvu. That's what we love. And they said that we're going to play fast.
Right.
We're not going to we're going to make you have to think about everything we're doing because we're going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of a fit than guys like Brandon Smith, who do seem like a little more zone, stay in your spot, kind of not fly to the ball kind of guys.
Brandon didn't play with a ton of instincts because he didn't seem to trust his mental process of figuring things out. He was really slow on reactions and things like that. Now, Chandler Wooten's a little bit surprising to me. I was a big Chandler Wooten guy, and I thought that he played very fast and instinctual, and I thought that's why he was going to make the roster. It's again, though, I think we touched on it briefly with the whole farm system aspect of the practice squad and the 53-man. They're just figuring out. It's almost like these are live tryouts to get some other bodies into practices and see how they react with the roster, right? So I'm not going to overreact yet because I think that there is a chance that there's some call-ups and some drop-downs that happen before we even get to week one. And you can bring up 2 people from the practice squad before each week as well. So there's the ability to bring up 2 of those players. You look at like the inside linebacker depth and you say, well, Camus is really the only other guy that we have back there outside of our starters. Yeah, but maybe we activate Chandler Wooten every single week, you know?
Right.
Exactly. It's just the logistics and keeping it flexible and pliable is the reason for a lot of these moves, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think they probably communicated that to these guys because they all came back, except for Taylor. I mean, they all wanted to be here. So I think that was probably communicated with them. And especially being able to keep Leota, which I know you really like. Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that one hurt a little bit when he didn't make the 53, but I also understood it, right? Like I get it, and I honestly didn't anticipate him making the 53 earlier in the year. I was just really impressed with what I saw from him, and he looked like he deserved to be on an NFL team. But being on the practice squad for this team with the depth at the outside linebacker position, I think is a really nice place for him to end up too, though.
Yeah. And then Throckmorton, I don't get that one at all. Maybe it's just, hey, what are the Saints doing? Give us some insight. That might be the only reason. I don't know.
That's a head scratcher. I wasn't. Look, I don't know too much about him. First of all, I'll be completely honest about that. I know that he played his college ball at Oregon. I know that he has started at left guard and right guard, I believe, in the NFL. So there is some experience there. And when we keep guys like Chandler Zavala and Nash Jensen, so we've got 2 rookies. Zavala seems to have a big role coming his way, especially with Corbett starting on the PUP list. So we know that Zavala is going to get some time, but maybe it is simply just having a guy with experience to see what he can look like. Does he stand out against these rookies? And Nash Jensen, maybe even in particular, did we just not see Nash get competition against quality players? So let's see what this guy who was going to possibly get some playing time on the Saints. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm with you that it's not my favorite addition. I thought that there were other interior linemen on the waiver that I probably would have. And we spent a claim on him. So it wasn't like we just tried to recruit him to the practice squad afterwards. We actually put a claim in and we're willing to do that. So there's somebody values him. I'm just not exactly sure who or why.
I mean, he was in the NFL. I mean, he was an NFL player and he wasn't a practice squad player. So I think he was a bad NFL player, but he was an NFL player. So we'll see. Maybe people get better. I think the things that we were talking about that we are sort of surprised on. Did we come to the conclusion that Barno was making it, or did we say that Barno was? Yeah. I think I think that was a bubble guy.
Barno and Leota, I believe, were the 2 that we had.
We said peace out to YGM.
Yep.
I think that they must see development from YGM because YGM has all the physical traits in the world. Like he is an athlete. He's long. He's strong. Good run defender. But he just hasn't developed. He hasn't got
his
better.
Athleticism, though, I think is actually the thing that has hampered him because of the fact that, now playing the outside linebacker position, athleticism is going to change for what he needs. Being a hand down 4-3 end is a little bit different responsibility wise than what he's going to be asked to do. And that's the concern. But the other thing that I saw was him playing, 3 technique and speed packages. And that is something that he can provide, that when we have nickel package out there, nickel personnel out there, and we need that interior speed rush, and we don't necessarily want to put Shy Tuttle out there.
Mm.
maybe you do see YGM line up there, and he could be the only guy that really had that versatility. So they're
Gotcha.
going to see how that fits maybe the first couple of weeks. And then again, that's a practice squad move that if he's just getting manhandled and he's too slow on the outside when he is tasked with playing that outside linebacker alignment, then maybe we look at Raekwon Williams or somebody getting that swap out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, when the Houston, so you see all these attitude guys that we bring in, like I'm the baddest motherfucker in that exists
Right.
versus, well, I guess they just think I'm not very good. So that's why they brought in like, just, it's
Yeah.
like playing the
Yeah.
victim. Like I don't like that mentality in the locker room
Sure.
compared to all these other like dogs that we have.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing I get from YGM. Like I'd rather have a Leota doing that kind of stuff, or
Right.
or just the I'm I'm good and I know I'm good and
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I think that's the only thing that really throws me off with YGM is that I just want the mentality to change.
Yep.
He's also a Burns guy, so maybe that had something to do with it. Like
Definitely
they're
possible.
they're close, so I don't know. That's about all I had as far as guys that Thurman, I guess, another guy that I had that was kind of we didn't really think about.
And we got a
Um,
lot of eggs in the Thurman basket, don't we? And
yeah.
that it makes me a tiny bit nervous because
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what it is that they have seen that was so remarkable that they were like, yeah, look, we're going to start this guy. We are feeling good about it. We are willing to cut some other guys that we've been very high on.
Yeah.
And a lot of it could just be coach speak. We only know what the fans are allowed to know. I just
Mm-hmm.
know that there hasn't been a ton of like experience from Nick Thurman that would make you feel like he was
Yeah.
worth kind of tying your anchor to, right?
Yeah. I didn't like.
I hope he's worth it.
Right. It's the guy that we even bring up when we were talking about 53 man.
Right.
I don't think we brought him up at all. He's kind of a
Yep.
meh to me.
Yeah,
So
I think that we both anticipated Raekwon Williams and Taylor
yeah,
Stallworth being the two, and they're both on the practice squad for what it's worth. That's
yeah.
good,
And it
you
might be
know.
intel. Like they might have said that somebody was looking at Thurman and they wanted him, and nobody was looking at these other
Yep.
guys, and they know we would keep them. So
Yep.
they might have said, "Let's try to keep all three." They probably communicated that to all three of them. Hey, it's still a competition,
Right.
and we're just doing the best thing to keep everybody in house. So that
Yep.
could be it. I don't know. It just I'm with you. It kind of seems a little odd. You want to get to the practice squad and guys that we really liked that are on the practice squad that
Yeah.
I'm also kind of. You said it earlier today is that wow they didn't get picked up. So I know guys that we had making the team: Leota, McCray. We said Raekwon Williams, Wooten, and Keith Taylor. Keith Taylor's not on the practice squad, but he got cut. We thought he was going to
Right.
make the team. And you, I think, especially said McCray.
Yeah.
Uh, so who is our backup center now? Is it Mays? Is Mays our
Yeah.
backup
It's
center?
Cade Mays, and
Yeah.
so I know that Cade Mays can play center, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
understand this whole league wide offensive line depth issue that everyone has been talking about lately.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. I get it. But Cade Mays has played pretty much every other offensive line position outside of center in his
Yeah.
career. Now, he took a couple snaps at center, I believe, last preseason, not this preseason,
Yeah.
but his rookie year. I think he took a few snaps at center and had showed his versatility to be able to do that. And maybe it is just that they feel better about his proclivity at guard and to play tackle if we get in a jam than they
Yeah.
do about keeping Justin McCray strictly for a backup center purpose. Because
Yeah.
what they're banking on is that we don't need a backup center, right? And if
Yeah.
you do, at least you have someone that's capable of making a snap.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with that is that I think that center is an extremely important position that
Yeah.
sometimes maybe gets overlooked. And it's almost twofold, too, with the fact that we've seen Bradley Bozeman still struggle with pass protection at times.
Mm.
So there's a part of me that just wants to make sure we're not completely hitching our wagon to the idea that Bozeman is a surefire, gonna be a stud week in, week out. Maybe there's some competition in practices that could benefit that. And I thought that having a veteran like McCray might push him a little bit harder because he might feel that pressure behind him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that Cade Mays, someone who's never taken an NFL snap at center, gives you that guy in the rear view feeling.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it could be contract related too. Like
Possible.
you're paying Cade Mays a 6th-round rookie price versus
Right.
McCray, who's going to be a vet price. So,
Yep.
and that could be. I don't know that's it, but I mean, I'm just thinking. Same with Rowe. Like, do you want to play the vet price or not?
Well, and remember when we did our 53-man prediction, I didn't say that Rowe was going to make the team.
Yeah.
And I think that ended up being pretty much what we thought, that Sam Franklin seemed to have made a big enough impression that he's not just a special teams ace at this point in these coaches' minds. This is a guy that can be trusted on the defensive side and on special teams. And Rowe being back on the practice squad is good. Maybe he's one of those guys that we call up, every other week or something like that too, when it's game plan specific. And I think we talked about this when we talked about the 53-man, is that if you have a game plan where somebody is an aerial threat more than other teams, maybe that's the time that Eric Rowe doesn't make that active roster, right? He stays down there because we're not going to play him. Right. But on other games, maybe even like Atlanta Falcons is a good example, right? They don't have a whole lot of field stretching going on. We know that they're going to run the ball, so perhaps we see Eric Rowe come up for that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's we can talk about Wright. We can talk about, Thomas Oliver. They were all kind of bubble guys, Stallworth. These guys they're practice squad guys.
Yeah.
Like we've already touched on, they are. They can. I'm happy if any of these guys get pulled up. It's not gonna be like we're gonna have depth problems.
Right.
So I like the idea of a 69-man roster mentality because yes, if any of these guys get pulled up, I don't think we lose that big of a step, and we also have some high upside like Leota.
And just because some of these guys are like our guys that we've talked about liking doesn't mean that it's not lost on me that they aren't NFL starting players right now.
Mm-hmm.
I get that Ike Leota isn't going to come in and be expected to put up 7 sacks this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think that he has the traits and the attitude and the way that he approaches the game that I wanted him to be around. And he is. So I'm totally okay with how that ended up. I'm just glad that he's on the practice squad at least and not somewhere else that we look back on it in hindsight and are like, man, we really should have kept him,
Mm-hmm. So there's two things that kind of stand out to me for our overall picture of what's kind of we're kind of saying. We kept 5 tight ends initially. We put Sullivan on IR. So we have 4 tight ends on the active squad.
And Gio is a tight end fullback hybrid, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So we have basically holding on a fullback.
Right.
Then we have all our receivers are large receivers. Like we have very big receivers. We saw Mingo come in and help block on the interior line.
Right.
This all tells me we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball a lot. Yep. Frank Reich, I did this because I did a Reich show. A Panthers pod, my 32 and 32. They ran the ball the 5th most amount when he was the Colts head coach. He runs the ball. He likes to run the ball.
Yep.
And they have large dudes. They're going to run the football. So we're going to run the football quite a bit. And it says to me on defense, we want to play fast.
Right.
We don't need to be the biggest guys in the room. We are going to be fast. We're going to get you the ball quickly. We are going to be multiple. You say multiple all the time.
I do.
We are going to be able to cover each other. We are playing with a high motors, very guys that want to hit people. So I kind of see what we're doing.
Yeah.
As far as where we want to go with our roster and how we want to play.
Yeah, what's the philosophy, right? You can
see
how the composition matches the philosophy.
Right, exactly. And I think that's going to help a lot with our pass pro because we run the ball a lot. It's going to set up play action. Think about Russell Wilson. Everybody was like, let Russ cook, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Russ did very, very well because they ran the ball a whole lot.
That's right.
And it set up play action. And when that didn't happen, when he went to Denver and he had to be a pass-only quarterback, he wasn't very good. But Gino was good in that system because they were run-first team. They would run the ball heavily, and it sets up a pass protect.
Any quarterback, no matter how remarkable you are, becomes less remarkable if you're one-dimensional as an offense. And so when you are just dropping back and you're throwing it 60 times a game, that guessing game goes away a lot for a defense, and they get to deploy things that actually work against pass formations and concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. I expect a lot of running. I think that is just part of this offense. The only thing that I'm a little bit still concerned with when we talk about philosophy and composition of the roster, we want to play fast on defense. We want to stay multiple. We want to be able to disguise coverages, all of that stuff. I get it. We are just very light, man. We're a light team, and a 3-4 is already a difficult. And I don't think we'll run a 3-4 base often, but just from a conceptual standpoint and for simplicity, a 3-4 base already runs into its issues against the run.
Yeah.
And you need stout players up front to kind of negate some of that.
Yeah.
And so there is just a part of me that still has a little bit of a concern about that run defense. That was my concern coming
Yeah.
into the year. It was my concern during the preseason, and it's still that concern for me.
Well, that's why McCall was such a tough, because that was our big buy. Like we need a Vita Vea, we need a Will Fuller, we
Yeah.
need like that anchor right
And
there.
even if he doesn't play a lot, right? Even if he only played 10 or 15 snaps a game because you're not in that base defense, those 10 or 15 snaps are intentional, though, because they're run likely opportunities that having him in there, or even if you're talking about blitz scenarios, having him in there to free up the linebackers or the corners or the safeties to get through that line. I mean, that's the point. So it's just going to be curious to see what this defensive front can do with guys like we were just talking about with Nick Thurman. Is he going to be able to show enough versatility that he could do all of those things? Because that's what they kept on saying was the reason for Marquand to be cut. Didn't fit the scheme. We want more out of that position. We need them to do other things. All right. Now we need to see, can Nick Thurman do other things, or is he a one-trick pony the opposite way?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you see how like the 49ers roster is built, right? They have light linebackers. Like Fred Warner might be the lightest linebacker in the league, but he's excellent because they just got Hargrave for that. They give Hargrave a lot of money to be on the inside, and they have Armstead. Like they have these guys they're the run stoppers. They're the guys, but you're fast. You're still fast. You can still get to people, but you need those big dudes,
powerful guys that can collapse that line and make the guys who can move and rove a little bit easier, make their job easier, right?
Yeah. That's what makes Aaron Donald so insanely gifted, is that he can do both.
Great at everything.
Yeah. It's so wild. But yeah, I agree. That's why I didn't really understand I know we want to talk about the Saints, but that's what I didn't understand what the Saints are doing. They lost all their big dudes interior and their best, who I think is their best run defender in Caden Ellis last year. So, and they brought in some young guys to play that interior, and I think they're just going to get eaten alive in the run game. Me specifically, but I hope that's not us as well.
Right.
So, and I think Fitterer said something like that. I think Fitterer's main goal is to get somebody on the defensive line. I think he said that in the presser. So hopefully they have something in mind. Hopefully it's somebody. Hopefully it's a big trade. That's what I'm hoping for. Hopefully some people aren't very excited to be where they are, and they decide to come to us instead. So I think that's anything else you want to kind of touch on with the 53 man and anything like that. Any other players?
No, I think that honestly, it went about as you would expect. There was a couple of names here and there that maybe didn't make the initial that are on the practice squad, but for the most part, man, these are the players that we thought would be on this roster. And so let's finish it off like this then. Since we're talking about composition of a roster and composition of this team, right? There's been conversations about Scott Fitterer because some people didn't like some of these moves, the Brandon Smith, the Shy Smith, those kinds of things, that Scott Fitterer is entirely overrated as a general manager.
Good.
So I can understand people being frustrated with the way that this roster was made and with the responsibility that the previous head coach was given and how much freedom he had and decision-making ability. But we got to understand too, though, what we have seen this offseason isn't just from a player personnel standpoint. Scott Fitterer worked with David Tepper as opposed to David Tepper making a decision this year. This staff that everyone is crazy about, this is also one of Scott Fitterer's products. You know what I mean? And if we're so high on that, that has to be accounted for. As far as the players, look, Fitterer has to take some of that responsibility, and he did yesterday in a press conference when he was asked about, hey, it looks like you've gotten rid of a lot of the Matt Rule type of players, that have been drafted. And he said that wasn't just all Coach Rule. He said, I had a hand in that too. Like, this is a collaborative effort. That's what he's supposed to say, right? And you're glad that he would say something like that. But it's also just true. As the GM, there has to be a buck stops here kind of mentality too, despite what an owner tells a coach that he can do. If you got a major problem with the decisions that are being made, speak up, use your big boy voice, right? And it didn't seem like he did that, so he gets to take some of that responsibility. But as far as this team and the way that it's built, saying that he's overrated, man, you got to go through this year at least, because this is the year that we are all saying he is accountable for, right? Like, no more excuses. You kept the players that you kept without any influence from the Cornhusker. So at this point, dude, this is what it is. We can evaluate right now. And if you don't like decisions that are being made throughout the year and at the end of the year, 100% put him at his doorstep. But the conversation of him being overrated, GM is a very difficult job, man. There's what, 3 really solid GMs on an every year basis. Outside of that, it's you're lucky to find what you can find. He moved mountains to get Bryce Young here. That buys him time for me, man. Like, I'm super excited about Bryce to the point where you can make a couple of other mistakes. You could even make a panic move going for DJ Johnson. I'm okay with it if Bryce hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We brought in Hassan Reddick. We identified him for $9 million. And they matched what Philly was giving him. And Hassan Reddick was like, nah, I'm not standing for this guy. What's he gonna do? Like, what's he gonna do to keep him there? You gotta keep these guys. He brought in Stephon Gilmore, who ended up leaving and going to the Colts. That's not like he brought him in. You got to keep him. You got to sell him. The coaching staff has to sell him on what he's going to be doing.
Right.
So
and we don't know. Yeah, we don't know how much of some of those decisions, right? Like the Hassan Reddick and the Stephen Gilmore, because there's a lot of conversation about they kept Dante Jackson over Gilmore, and maybe that's true, but I don't know the percentage of the factoring of all those outside pieces, right?
Right.
I don't know that it was definitely this conversation of Gilmore or Jackson. Maybe we had an idea that Gilmore was going to go regardless, so we went ahead and we extended Jackson. There's nuances that we just are never going to know. It's fair to criticize and question. It's not fair to make a judgment before all of those things kind of settle and you're able to look at the entire picture.
I mean, we can go on forever. We can talk about the DJ Moore contract. Remember when DJ Moore got money? We were like, "Ooh, that seems like a lot of money." And then all these receivers got paid money after money after money.
And he's a smart contract at that point.
Yeah, and we look like, oh, we only gave him that much money. It was like it felt super, super, super cheap when we were doing it that way. Man, you brought in a Pro Bowler that was on the Eagles squad last year for $6 million a year.
Yeah.
David Montgomery's making $6 million a year, who's a career 3.8 yard per carry person who's going to play backup. They brought in Jamal Williams for $4 million over at the Saints. Jamal Williams is 28 years old. Miles Sanders is 25 years old. So it's like you bring in DJ Chark for $5 million. That dude's going to get when you see Alan Lazard getting $11 million, you brought DJ Chark in for $5. Like these, he's not bad at all. None of these contracts are bad, and he can get off every single one of them in 2 years. Every single one of them. So it's really odd that people think that Fitterer is bad. How do you change over an entire team and change over your entire coaching staff and be like, wow,
it seems more no doubt. Yeah. And it seems more PTSD than it does like actual looking at this from a non-biased, clear-headed view, right? I just think that we're so used to seeing the Panthers team being put together like in a hodgepodge fashion that we're not looking at this as a, like you just said, being able to get out of some of these contracts next year. We're testing some things out this year. We've got a rookie quarterback. We want to find out what the deficiencies are. And we've created a roster that will show us that. We have, if people exceed what the expectations are, we're in a good position to keep them and continue on with that trajectory. If they don't, and maybe the overall consensus opinion on some of these guys was more accurate than we were, then we can get rid of them and we can move on and we can say, hey, look, we've tried that element. It doesn't work for Bryce. It doesn't work for this offense. It doesn't work for this coach. So here's another guy that's different that we can try out, and we're not financially tied down for that. That's all of this just has to be accounted and really thought out when it comes to evaluating the job that the GM has done. And I think we're still a year away from being able to properly do that.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Chark could probably get off of it. You get off. He's a 1 year deal. Houston's a 1 year deal. Miles Sanders, you're paying 2 years worth of him guaranteed for the same price that the Cardinals are playing James Conner for 1 year.
That's right.
So, like Adam, you only have to have Adam Thielen for 2 years. Right. You can spread that money. You can be the good thing about that. Everybody's saying, "Oh, we got 4 year, however much that Sanders got. I think $25 million, $26 million, something like that." You say that about him, but it's like, no, he only has 2 years guaranteed, and we get to play with the salary cap that way. We can spread that money out over those times, and we can still cut him because his guaranteed money is already given to him. So it's
Suleiman's a monster back there with the financials.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. It's look at how long the Saints made their window. Now they're eating all that. They're going to be trashed for like 10 years now.
Right.
But their window was like 8 years long because of how they manipulated the cap.
That's right.
Bill comes due eventually, but we could play around with Bryce on a rookie deal for 5 years,
Right.
and then we start manipulating a little bit more after that.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's all I have. I was so happy coming into it. Now I'm getting mad at Panther fans. Just like stop saying that about Fitterer, or even Reich. Like we saw 3 preseason games, and everybody's like the world's falling. Like they have like the sky's falling down. You can see Nick Reich on right. That's what's going around. Nick Wright on TV. He's like, oh man, he's not going to have any time in the world. That might be the worst offense. And after you definitely didn't watch the last preseason game. After the first 2 preseason games, that's like what you're saying.
Yeah, we're gonna be okay. I'm shifting gears. Right, we've done all of the offseason procedures. We've gone through everything. We've seen the preseason. We've gotten into a hysterical panic. We've gone through all of the regular season emotions, and we've done it in 3 weeks' time. Yeah. So now I'm just shifting gears, and I'm strictly optimistic about this team. Until they give me a reason to doubt them, I still feel just as good as I did before the offseason. You know what I mean? Like, we still have all those pieces in place. Let's wait until we get some clarification on Terrace Marshall Jr. and DJ Chark's injury and see what we're going to roll out week 1. Speaking of week 1, we'll have a nice little preview coming once we get a little bit of that information.
Yeah, I still got my notes from my 32 and 32 on the Falcons. Also, I have Panthers at 11 wins now, not 12.
Yeah, you told me that. And you know what? I think that I could go down to 10 too. And I think
that still wins the division, though.
Mine's going to be a spiteful loss of 1 win, and I'm just going to say just because Ike Leota didn't make the roster, I'm taking a win off. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I think that 10 or 11 wins is still my range for the team.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I didn't realize we went road. We went 3 straight road games.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Screw you, schedule makers.
It's a lot, man.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's it. We touched on everything. I think we did a pretty good show, if anybody's still listening. And let's touch on Shark Academy, because I'm pretty sure that people want to know if they want a jersey or not.
Yeah, so the raffle is over. We have reached the 25-person threshold to do the jersey raffle. We'll get that set up so that we can do that on the game preview for week 1 against Atlanta. Make that just like an extravaganza show, give away a jersey, talk about the first NFL game for the Panthers.
Extravaganza.
And we'll see if we can't get in touch with Coach D and see how they finished up with their thing, and then get an idea of when they're going to do the drawing for those Saints tickets as well. And we'll relay all that information. But we did cross that 25-person threshold. So thank you to everybody that bought tickets and supported that incredible cause, and I look forward to sending one of you lucky sons of bees a NFL jersey.
Let's go! I hope it's B. I already got my DJ Chark jersey. I'm good. But yeah, I think that wraps us up. Thanks everybody for listening. Like, download, subscribe. I always forget one, but do all of those things. Yeah. And always keep pounding.
Keep pounding.